You're listening to The Vidaurri Effect with your host, Rudy Vidaurri, owner of the Apex Predator MMA gym in Rancho Cordova, California, co-hosted by Jennifer Steele. Now here's Rudy. It's on.
My name is Sensei Rudy Vidaurri. I am the owner and head coach of Apex Predator Mixed Martial Arts, and you're listening to The Vidaurri Effect. Today I want to talk about anxiety, being anxious, something that everyone has to deal with as an adult, maybe as a kid. Hopefully, maybe never. But if you're that person, I really doubt you're living life to the fullest, because if you want to put yourself out there, you're going to have to deal with stress. You're going to have to deal with pressure. You're going to have to deal with what's next. You're going to have to face the music, so to speak. Anxiety is part of that. Everybody deals with it. How do you manage it? That's the most important question. Are you bringing it on yourself? Is it necessary anxiety, or is it completely unnecessary? Think about the things that are stressing you out. I know sometimes we get ahead of ourselves. We go to worst case scenario. I know sometimes I do. I've been through enough in life that I kind of process of elimination, rule things out. What's the worst that can happen here? And then I try to cope backwards from there. But when you look around and you actually see things for what they are, you realize most of that's in your head, and things are never as bad as they seem. Maybe in the moment they are. But if you give it some time and you work through the process, you start to realize this could have been a lot worse. This isn't as bad as I originally thought. And if you have the wisdom to, in the moments that are hard, think bigger picture, see beyond the gray sky, as 311 would say, and understand that it's all going to be all right, it's a virtue. It's important. It's a characteristic that everybody should have, and in my experience, anxiety has just been a waste of time. You can be proactive, or you can sit around and pout about it. And anyone who's listened to this podcast understands that, and they understand how I feel about people who feel sorry for themselves. And I don't need to say a whole lot about that right now, but if you want to feel different about what you're going through, get up and do something about it. Looking at a strategic approach to be able to work your way back out of the corner in a fight, right? If you're cornered, or if you're up against the cage, or if you're on the mat and you've been mounted and you're getting grounded, pounded, and, it feels like it's insurmountable, that's when you have to be at your best. That's when you have to dig deep. That's when you have to find something within yourself when you have nothing left to make something happen. And sometimes it's going to take that. It's going to take going out of your comfort zone. It's going to take, your finest moment in your darkest hour to just survive. So we're coming back off a break. We just had what I thought was birds. It's mating season out there. I thought they were getting busy up in a tree or something, but
in reality, kids, it was a fan.
It was a fan
blowing on me.
Yeah, and that blows. But you guys are going to have to deal with the first 5 minutes of this episode, having a little Tweety bird sound. But, coming back to what we're talking about, being anxious, most of the time it's a waste of time, but the management, going back to the management, how do you manage it? Some people drink, some people take Xanax. I've been, and have done both. And it's a slippery slope, and I'll guarantee you right now it is not the best way to manage stress or anxiety. The best way to manage stress or anxiety is, like I said a moment ago, to be proactive, to be strategic about ways you can eliminate your anxiety, or to realize your anxiety is self-inflicted and completely unnecessary and brought on yourself, or to have healthy outlets. If you have stress management in your life that doesn't involve the bottle or a joint or worse, then you start to look at the healthy outlets in your life, whether it's working out, whether it's music, whether it is a person, there are a lot of other ways to deal with stress and anxiety than to be self-destructive, because guess what? That's only going to cause more anxiety. And Who here has ever been completely anxious and then went and got shit-faced drunk and then woke up the next day and your anxiety was even worse? It doesn't necessarily help. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily help, you know. And, you know, I like CBD as much as the next guy, you know. Weed just not the same for me anymore. It used to be, but, you know, if you're looking at the things that can help you, you know, it's not a one size fits all for everyone. And even listening to this podcast, you might have people that are telling you what you need to do to improve your life, but only you know sometimes what's best for you. You know, everybody can tell you how to change or how to improve, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're coming from the wrong place. You know, kids that are listening to this, if it's your parents telling you to do something and they feed you and clothe you and, you know, give you 3 squares a day and you know, give you resources and activities and pay for your education, then you should probably shut the fuck up and listen to what they're telling you to do. I'm not saying don't listen to the people with the best intentions, but I'm talking about whenever somebody's struggling, everybody's going to have their own 2 cents. People pop out of the woodwork and all of a sudden there's going to be people that think they know what's best for you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have to know what's best for you.
That could be trial and error too, because you may not know right away what's best for you. You know, if you're a person who never really dealt with anxiety, like I had never dealt with it until I was in my 30s and maybe mid 30s, and I was on a beach in Hawaii. And I started feeling like my chest was squeezing together. My heart was racing real fast. I felt awful. I couldn't imagine how that could be happening to me on the beach, you know. Right. And unfortunately, sometimes anxiety brings on more anxiety. So you have a panic attack and then you tend to have more of them. So you have to get a handle on it early to try to stop that cycle. And you have to try different things to see what works for you.
One thing that a lot of people forget too is that anxiety and, you know, emotional well-being can be directly related to gut health. You know, people that use things or eat poorly or you know, don't exercise, sometimes have a lot of anxiety, you know, and a lot of what's happening with our gut can, you know, lead to or be the cause of different stresses in our life, you know.
Especially if you're eating the wrong foods. I mean, like you said, processed food, fast food. There's all kinds of bad things in there that you got to imagine is going to be bad for your system.
And it affects your mindset. It affects a lot of things. So, you know, if you're not taking a probiotic or if you're not eating properly daily and getting decent exercise, you know, those are some of the low-hanging fruit that, in my experience, once I kind of tackled some of those and stopped taking, you know, things like Xanax and Vicodin and destroying my gut with alcohol every day and eating, you know, recklessly, you know, and living recklessly, that all of a sudden I started to find that, you know, just changing how I ate, you know, back in my early 30s really kind of helped transform, you know, my approach and my mindset and helped me deal with a lot that I wasn't, you know, that I didn't think I was capable of dealing with.
Yeah. You know, if you are a person who eats processed food, fast food all the time, think about this. If you can stop eating like that and try to eat healthier, it's going to help you in all kinds of ways. It's going to help you not have high blood pressure. It's going to help you not hopefully have cardiovascular disease. And those things all come from being unhealthy.
Yeah. You know, and for those of you out there that are listening to this and think that I got it all figured out, it took me a while, you know, before I became a mentor and a life coach and all this success and all the things that I've been able to do. You know, now at 43, it's been well documented. I think I've talked a lot about my past and the things I've had to overcome, both with criminal charges, you know, for losing my temper and then my addiction and you know, the struggles that I had to, you know, face respectively. But, you know, when I came back from LA, you know, and I was having fun down there, living it up, you know, and I was a single ultimate fighter with, you know, and worked as a chef and a musician and basically, you know, every man's dream. I had whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted it, you know, and, when I kind of fell flat on my face down there and I had to come back home up here to Northern California, I had such tremendous anxiety that, you know, I was back. I was living at my mom's, you know. I I can't believe that I had to like come back, that things got to be too fast for me down there. And I had to slow myself down, but I was so low about it and so depressed and had so much anxiety that I didn't leave the house. I would stay up all night, I should say, and take creatine and no explode and drink Rock Stars and Red Bulls like they were going out of style all night. And, I was meeting girls online and going and having fun and in the middle of the night and, Mr. Fly by Night, and then during the day, I didn't want to face anything. I didn't even want to do grocery shopping. I didn't have, I had so much anxiety that I didn't even want to go, live a regular life. So I had to do everything in the middle of the night when nobody was around, and the only encounters I had were with strange women, in the middle of the night, and other than that, I didn't want to be around people. I didn't want to face people. I didn't want to deal with traffic. I didn't want to go out. And it took me, a little bit before I could get on my own 2 feet again. And I had to stop using Xanax. And then, I had already quit drinking, but, even though I quit drinking, it doesn't mean that it was going to equate to automatic, happiness and stress relief. And, sometimes you find that early on in your sobriety, you think, you quit and that things are magically going to happen and turn around for you. And a lot of people go back because that's not the case. Now, I'm older now. I can have a drink. I can relax. I can, if I want to smoke a joint, I'll smoke a joint. If I want to take CBD for inflammation or for stress, I do it. But, it's not a crutch. Back then in my late 20s, I needed crutches, just to function and be, an everyday guy, but it took me having to face, my fears and my insecurities and all the things that I had to deal with, it took me, and it's very hard because a lot of people will never get to this point, but I had to take a real honest inventory of where I was at and I wasn't happy with it. I wanted to be able to go out during the day and not feel like I had to get in a fight with people that were looking at me the wrong way or I was creating my own anxieties, drinking massive amounts of caffeine. That's another one. It was just getting me all spun out, so
I still drink too much caffeine.
Well, and like a lot of people don't think about it this way, but caffeine can fuck you up, and it was marketed back then, in the early 2000s and, Red Bulls and Rock Stars came out and I was walking down the street with a Rock Star in my hand and a Black and Mild in the other.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was just, Kid Dynamite back then, it's like, and somebody looked at me wrong. There was a problem immediately and it escalated quickly. And, when you have the tools to back it up, you're not really scared of anybody. But like I said, I was scared of myself. I couldn't overcome my own demons and my own stress and anxiety to even be able to go outside.
What was it that finally happened that you decided you were going to make a change?
You get to a point where you realize that a lot of the stuff you're doing, you're bringing it on yourself. In my case, it was, but I was also dealing with other sets of circumstances that were challenging as well. I started to realize I had to be my own best friend, that life was already going to be tough. But that the only way I was going to help myself out was by eliminating and cleaning my side of the street. So I had to, process of elimination, like I said, look at the things that I was doing that were self-sabotaging me, and the caffeine for one, getting addicted to Xanax was another one, even though it would temporarily a Band-Aid, fix the anxiety for now, a few hours at a time. It was doing other things,
Yeah.
And ultimately I overdosed on it because I just, I had.
What happens to people.
Yeah.
That's the horrible side of that. That's why they don't prescribe it anymore.
Well, it's not good for you,
No.
But really getting down to the root of it was looking at my deeper rooted issues, and really being honest with myself about those things, losing my dad at a young age. The anger I dealt with, my drug addictions, my alcohol addictions, all the things that I had thought I had overcome, and I had overcome a lot of it, but there was still things that were hanging on that I was hanging on to that weren't allowing me to heal, I had even several talk therapists tell me that like I was too broken to fix,
What?
Yeah. Well, no, I had, but I also had a good mentor and life coach. His name is Fritz. But, and we're still friends to this day, and he was one that kind of was very instrumental in my progress and development. And I've known the guy for 20 years, something now. But, the idea is that I had to kind of find myself, and sometimes you have to go on these spiritual journeys and you have to do things that are hard and take risks. And, having my daughter, and then, ultimately had my twins later on and I lost one of them, rest in peace, Ronan, but his brother is still alive, and I have my kids, but when I had my daughter, she's 11 now, daddy's baby, and, when you start to realize it's not about you, it's like, oh my God.
No, it's really not.
Yeah. The world doesn't fucking revolve around me, like it's kind of a beautiful realization. I had different purpose and different drive and different incentives, and different reasons to go out and do better, but a combination of those two things, I think, first of all, getting to the root of me and being honest with the things that I was struggling with and the things that I was bringing on myself, and then having a kid, and having my daughter, she kind of, reprioritized, my life for me. And unfortunately, a lot of fathers don't come to that same realization. They keep fucking up. They go to prison. They make mistakes. I was coming off, a couple of felonies, and then, they were ultimately expunged. I beat the case. I was still on a dark path, and then I changed course and I chose a righteous path. And that's a decision I think everybody has to make, because there's a crossroads in everybody's life. Whether it's anxiety that is the trigger, whether it's stress, whether it's financial, whether it is, relationship related, whether it's addiction related. I think everybody has big boy, big girl decisions that they have to make sometimes that aren't easy.
I haven't always been the best in my life at stepping up and saying, yeah, I'll take responsibility for that. I think it's easy sometimes to find other things to blame it on than it's just you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just you, Jen. It's like, I don't know. I don't have any specific examples off the top of my head, but, different situations where I need to take responsibility for, maybe it's a failure of some kind. Maybe it's a crutch of some kind. Maybe it's, I lost this job and it really was my fault because I was messing up, and you have to be able to take responsibility for that stuff. I think once you do that, it's less anxious for you, because otherwise you're just holding on to all this, this crazy fantasy world where nothing is your fault.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. I think the fear of failure, we've kind of put ourselves out there, and then all of a sudden it's like, it's hard to put yourself out there, and it's okay to be safe and it's okay to stay within yourself. But then sometimes you have to go out and you have to try. And I was so concerned and vain about looking good and about not fucking up or about not losing that I kept myself from moving forward. And then I was realized, it wasn't until I was free to kind of let everything go that I could really do some stuff with myself. And then, it's like I still, the 30s, I told you early 30s were kind of a struggle, to the mid 30s, but having my daughter really changed me, and kind of opened it up, and then after losing my son, I started taking a lot more risks and then started my business and, went for the things that I realized life was too short not to go for. And whether I fell flat on my face or whether I didn't, hell or high water, I was going to go take my shot, it's hard out there. There's no doubt about it. But who do you want to be known as? Do you want to be known as somebody that gave up, never even gave it a shot, or gave it everything they had and went out swinging?
It sounds really cliche to say this, but you really do have to try to be in the moment, too. I think you have to try to enjoy where you're at. You have to enjoy the little things and not think about all the big things all the time.
Yeah.
Because I think that'll drive you crazy, too. If you're always worried about all these things that make you worried,
right,
you're going to have anxiety.
And you're right. That's a fantastic point, because it's kind of a complete package of all the little things that we're made up of, right? And if you focus, on the little things, it's like they always say, don't sweat the small stuff, and I've been real good at that. I've been real good at kind of like, even the big stuff. Like I've kind of had like this relaxed kind of, like, hey, like I'm going to be all right, and that's kind of been survival for me. But, sometimes it's been a little bit too relaxed, it's like no urgency. Like, I don't, it's as long as I'm not dead, I'm okay, and, but yeah, not sweating the small stuff is a big step, because, I realized, that not sweating the small stuff was probably like 90% of what I was struggling with, and then once I got to that point, I was like, and I see people stress about all kinds of stuff these days. I am not worried about bullshit, like I am too old and I just don't give a shit enough to like focus on all the things that really are not going to make a difference in my life anymore. I'm so glad I'm at this point.
Oh, yeah. I have to liken this for a second to radio. Mm-hmm. So most of my professional career has been spent on the air doing different shifts at different radio stations. You would never know it to hear the frog in my throat right now, but that's a medical thing I'm working on. Anyway, yeah, I do. It's like a big frog sitting on my vocal cords. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating. Yeah. But back in the day when I was doing a show every day, you can't. This is one thing you learn when you're on the air every day. Mm-hmm. If you make a mistake, okay, you cannot stop and focus on the mistake and say, I'm sorry, everybody. I'm sorry I made a mistake, because people will become uncomfortable. Yeah. You will become uncomfortable. And the more that you do that to yourself, the worse it'll get. So you learn how to just make fun of yourself or make light of it and move on, Yeah. And that's kind of what you were just saying is I kind of do the same thing in my life. Yeah. I don't tend to beat myself up too hard over stuff either. Maybe I should more, but I have one of those attitudes that tomorrow's another day.
That's a perfect way to look at it. With quarterbacks, they call it a short memory. If you throw an interception, you have to go back out and lead the next drive, and that's something I got really good at an early age was to, because I fucked up a lot. So I had to either, like, it was either going to cripple me or it was going to be something that I was going to be like, okay, like I'm going to be, like better for this. And I just kind of like learned to roll with the punches, and people were kind of astonished at how like much I could deal with and still kind of keep a smile on my face and be like, hey, let's turn the music up. And, I got a little bit of that from my dad, and, I said the word cripple, if you are disabled or if you are in a wheelchair too, it's like, look at what you do have going for yourself. There's a lot of people that have, disabilities, literally, figuratively, or crutches, or they have, things that, they feel are insurmountable, or that like they are sets of circumstances that are incredibly challenging that can't be changed, and you talk about being proactive, it doesn't mean you're going to like get up out of your wheelchair and walk again. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there are things that you can do to cope and to become happy, and regardless of your circumstances, even if you're terminally ill, there is strength you can give others by being strong. Even if you have 6 months to live, that is 6 months longer than my son had, minus a week. There is a lot of beauty in life. And there is a lot to think about, because this is it, and you got to make the most of this time around. If you don't, and you're just dying one day at a time versus living one day at a time, that's on you.
Yeah. Think about how you cope with things, I guess, your coping mechanisms. Another thing I've always been really good at, these are two of my mottos, okay? Fake it till you make it. Yeah. And the show must go on. Yeah. So now, if you have to have stuff like that in your head to remind you to do that, then do that. Pick your catchphrase, whatever it is that you can fall back on. Yeah. Write it down, put it on your bathroom mirror, whatever. But I think those things really do help.
Yeah, they do. I mean, there's a movie called The Water Boy with Adam Sandler, and Rob Schneider's in a part, and he's kind of giving him a little pep talk, and he says, "You can do it." And so, I'm being a wise ass right now, but it's always one of those things where you're like, yeah, you can do it, Mm-hmm. But yeah, like having, different things that motivate you or things you surround yourself with. And I'm not trying to sound like a fortune cookie right now. I actually thought about starting a dirty fortune cookie business.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. An X-rated fortune cookie.
X-rated
Yeah.
cookies.
But I wrote an X-rated cookbook instead called Rude Food. You can find it on Amazon books, Kindle. But anyway, part of that, besides this podcast, right? Think about the things that you can do differently that are more positive. If it's the music you're listening to and you're listening to rap songs that, are talking shit about girls and bitch slapping people and shooting everyone and how life's a bitch, and, then you don't realize it, but it starts to kind of like, influence your character and how you carry yourself and how you approach things. Right. And I'm not saying you have to fucking listen to Kenny G or some bullshit, Sorry, Kenny G.
You don't have to sit there and play video games where you shoot people all day long every second of every day.
Yeah,
That's what we're saying.
Every second of the day. I got a Rockstar Games tattoo on my left wrist, but, I'll give a shout out to GTA Vice City, which is my favorite game of all times. But yeah, it does desensitize people. It does change people's, mindset, when you surround yourself with things that are, otherwise not happy. And it makes me happy to play those games. I have different outlets. I know not to let that influence me in a way that I'm going to go out and steal someone's car and then go shoot a bunch of people.
Thank you for not doing that.
Yeah, but like also being able to think about the people that are bringing you anxiety in your life, the things that are bringing you anxiety, whether it's songs, whether it's music, whether it's the way you're eating and you're eating poorly, you're eating fast food every day. But the people, I want to go back to that for a second. A lot of the people in our lives, you have to think about what's toxic versus what's positive, and when you think about the people that are causing you stress and anxiety, one way to do this, if you have a journal or if you have, for you little girls out there that have a diary, that was something back in the 80s. I don't even know if girls still have that anymore.
They still sell them. I think they're a horrible idea myself. But yeah, go ahead.
But, but like even taking a note, like noting, how you feel when you're around somebody, and even if it's a mental note or, if it's on your iPhone, like pressing, we went out to sushi today and, I felt this or that, I felt angry or I felt
positivity book.
The idea is that you'll be able to start to see that there's certain people that like do good in your life and there's certain people that aren't good for you in your life. And if you can start to think about that in a way that, okay, well, is this really worth it? Every time I'm around this person's making me feel anxious, sad, angry. And then a fraction of the time with them, it's good, or maybe it's good in bed, or maybe but does that really outweigh all the bad? You have to weigh the balance in life, because if there is more good or more bad than good in a relationship or in a friendship, you either have to cut your losses or you have to start fostering that friendship or that relationship so that that's a person you spend more time with. Or if they're bad for you, then that's a person you need to really do some soul searching with and start to think, I don't think this is worth it anymore. And I have enough self-esteem and I have enough self-worth and I'm strong enough to make the decision to separate myself from good and bad. And if you want to be good and if you want to have good things in your life and if you don't want to be anxious, you don't want to be stressed out, you got to make that choice. My name is Rudy Vidaurri for Jennifer Steele. I want to thank you guys for listening today. You can find episodes of The Vidaurri Effect on Spotify and at apexpredatormma.com. Stay blessed.
The Vidaurri Effect is a Steel Voices production. Recorded, produced, mixed, and engineered at Cat House Studios by Jennifer Steele. Hosted and created by Rudy Vidaurri, owner of Apex Predator MMA Gym in California. More info and full episodes available at apexpredatormma.com, steelvoices.com, and wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening to The Vidaurri Effect.